Here you go. Hey, everybody, it's Cara with the She's the Owner podcast, and we're still continuing on with the theme of having some incredible men on the show for a different perspective. So it's not just the girls talking. So Alok is here with us. I'm not going to attempt the last name, even though he schooled me on how to say it. I'm going to let him say it because I don't want to bugger it up. So you're a coach, and basically I want you to come and sort of give us the rundown of who you are, but thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's always very refreshing to hear a man's perspective on the masculine and feminine and toxic masculinity and toxic femininity, all that sort of fun stuff. So tell us what you do, where you do it, and then kind of how your journey or creation story around your company.
Thanks so much, Cara, for just having me on and inviting me to be here. It's a real honor. My name's Alok Appadurai. I help coaches reach the top 2% of their niche and be able to build their impact empire to make a difference in the world and earn a phenomenal living doing it. My journey's been built in mission-driven business my entire career. Ran 3 companies in clean energy. The second one was in global media platform for women to reshape body image and mass media. That came with a book project actually for mothers on the bodies of mothers, which I did with my ex, Jade Beal. And my third company was a sustainable clothing company that fed 500,000 meals to people in need. And I gave a TED talk on that. And then in 2016, I launched my coaching and consulting business to help people scale their impact and their income.
Amazing. Look at that. Was like nice and very masculine energy of you to describe it all so quickly and beautifully like that. So what did you do? So corporate jobs, always mission driven. What led you to be like, obviously I'm very candid and transparent, but that's not usual. That's not normal for a guy typically to be mission driven from the start. So talk a bit about maybe your childhood or your upbringing and how that led you to being aware at that level.
Yeah, so I had a spiritual experience at 19 in North India when I was driving with my parents, and it was hair-raising drive, and my 80-year-old self sat next to me, and I was on the investment banking track at the time, and my 80-year-old self basically said, "Hey, Alok, what did you do with your life? Who'd you spend your time with, and did it matter?" And that changed the trajectory of my whole life. So I'd say there's that as a major influence, and then there was my late mother who died in my arms in the bathroom of her home after a long battle of cancer. And I made a deep decision to carry on her legacy of being able to transform people's lives. She primarily focused on women. And so it's not really very surprising to me that like 80-90% of my client base are women. I truly believe that the world needs more women driving economies. We know what happens when more wealth moves through the hands of women, et cetera, et cetera. So those have sort of been my underpinnings since I was really, really young.
So it's interesting, like when you're talking about what your client base is predominantly women, this keeps coming up, right? Like I've done a few of these with the men, and there's obviously a pattern. And like, if you know Tony Robbins, he always says you'd be an idiot not to recognize a pattern. But so I'm not an idiot. They're a win for me today on a Friday. Woohoo! But it seems like why, and I just want your take on it, but why do you think, because it's mostly women that get coaches. Like it's over and over and over again. I'm seeing my friends are women entrepreneurs and they're getting coaches. You're talking about it. The last guest I just had on, same thing, the last 2 actually. Why do you think women, and this isn't totally masculine, feminine really yet, but maybe it is. Why do you think that those, I was going to say, I should probably take that back. Why do you think women are showing up in that way for coaches?
I'm going to reveal, can I be vulnerable for a second?
1,000,000%.
My most expensive mistake in my career was not asking for help early enough. And there were 2 driving factors. And I say this from stage, even though it's not flattering, I now totally embrace it. There was ego, and it wasn't like your traditional male ego. Like everyone's like, "Oh yeah, that's such what men do," right? And I'm like, well, no, to me, it was a little more nuanced than that, because it didn't come from my dad or anything like that. But the ego said, "Hey, look, you're an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs solve problems and they figure things out." And my brain translated that to figure it out on your own.
Right.
And then, so that was the ego saying, "Hey, look, you should be able to figure this out. Like, keep tinkering with it. Watch some more YouTube videos, read some more books, and you'll crack the code, right? And unlock all your impact and income, right?" And then there was the embarrassment, Cara. Like, there was the embarrassment inside myself that I wasn't always figuring it out, that I wasn't cracking the code on my own. And I was like, well, but look at all those people. They're cracking the code on their own. Like they're somehow figuring it out. Look, what's wrong with you? There must be something wrong with you, right? Like
Yep.
this was the narrative, and it held me back from asking for help. And I think that is the root where I think women I have found are more open to asking for help. And and again, I'm just speculating here, but I don't think there's the same stigma. Whereas men are kind of like, I should do it on my own. I need to figure everything out, right? And so it doesn't surprise me that more women are open and going, I bet if I hire a coach or a consultant, like I'll probably figure it out faster, right? Whereas more men, I think, are kind of hard-headed and stuck. And I know when I broke through that a number of years ago, it was like rocket ship. Like everything got better.
That's interesting because oh, hang on, I'm getting feedback here. Pause for technical difficulties, as per usual. Wouldn't be my show if there wasn't. But the interesting thing is that I would say I talk to a ton of women. I'm not a coach, and I say I'll never be one because in my other company, I have it's called the Content Company. And I used to be an SEO and agency person. And I started the writing part because I never wanted to do the SEO part anymore. I didn't want to have the calls that you get. So I'm saying that about coaching now. I don't think I'll ever be a coach. I want to support in other ways, but coaching will never be the thing. So when I talk to my female friends that are entrepreneurs and they're in their masculine, they're not asking for help, which is interesting. I think some of them might come and it might be that masculine thing that pushes them because they're like, oh, fuck, I'm competing. I need to do better, blah, 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 blah. But I think there's still a lot of them where ego is exactly what you're saying, where they're like, I don't need, and I'm guilty of that too. Like I get stuck in, I know all this shit. How come I can't figure it out?
I love that one.
Right?
That's the too close to the mirror, right? Like, why do I spend heavily? I've got a female coach and I'm in a full mastermind and I invest heavily into myself. Why? Because what I can do for other people, I can't do for myself.
Thank you.
It's called being too close to the mirror. And like, we can't see what we can't see, right? Because the mirror is right here. And once we understand that about ourselves, right? And then we can, when we shed all these past decisions that no longer uplift us to our highest self. And in my case, it's not even fancy language. Like I started replicating what highly successful people do, right? And I was like, they make that decision. I'm going to start making that decision. They view time this way. I'm going to start viewing time this way, right? So it wasn't even like really fancy. It was just like, what are people more successful than me doing? Right. And they have coaches, right?
Yep. Yeah. And my coaching call, so I have she was my friend first. She was a Think and Grow Rich. Like she'd done all of that. That's she's an NLP. And then she just went through Tony's coaching program. And now she's technically a Tony Robbins coach. And this is the thing. She sees my blind spots. Even when I think I'm seeing the fucking blind spot and I'm telling her the blind spot, which isn't really blind, she'll be like, around the corner. I was like, what? And it's true. But when, and this will lead into the masculine feminine, when I'm in my feminine energy and I'm secure in it and I'm feeling quiet in there, I can see everything crystal clear. It's not until my head and my masculine energy gets involved when that is necessary for us to execute. You have to have the hunter or it's fuck. You're not doing anything.
Right.
But it's once I get up here again, I'm lost in why, how, what's not working, and so talk a little bit about, because toxic masculinity, I think, is something that is so relevant right now, right? I mean, in business, in society, in politics, in leadership, it's everywhere. That's the cancer of, I think, the world right now. So talk a bit about what you think or what your definition might be on what a toxic masculine man would look like at any age. Like in the younger age, we know it's the bravado, the fast car, the being, sorry for the crude language, but a fuck boy. Like those are the terms that you associate with a toxic masculine young man. We used to call them players, but the cool kids, they don't, it's a harsher word now. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, toxic, I've seen myself as always being on the more emotional end of the spectrum, like ever
Of
since I was
course.
really young. And so I always felt like, oh my gosh, if I reveal that I'm emotional, like that's going to be a sign of weakness and I'm going to get beat up, right? Like that was kind of the prevailing notions. And certainly I think it's changing in business, but certainly in business, it's like to show any sign of weakness, it's like you're going to be destroyed, you're going to be eaten.
Yep.
And so I think that toxic masculinity it's clearly, and the evidence is clear in terms of how it's affecting women, right?
Hmm.
And it's also like, as a sensitive man, like you're getting eaten and steamrolled by these men as well, right? Like I've experienced it in business. So you have your kind of sociopathic narcissists in business that, you know, make you think that they're the right fit for you. And then all of a sudden you realize they're just like gaslighting you,
Right.
undermining you, just systematically destroying your sense of self. It's like, oh my God, like, why are you doing this? So, that toxicity, um, and I, to be very honest, like I don't want to sit here and say like I've been some saint. Like the more that as men, like we've kind of looked at our own behaviors, even as sensitive men, you're like, oh, but gosh, oh, that was like, I think every man has some track record that they're not super proud of.
Right.
I've said it to my girlfriend, right? Like, I said, hey, there are things I'm not thrilled about. Thankfully, they're not like in the horrible, horrible categories, but I've participated in ways of being that I'm not thrilled about as a 42-year-old man now.
See,
And
I
it's
told
just,
you I was older.
what's that?
I said, I told you I was older.
And I told you that my mom taught me never to ask.
Fair. He mentioned Tone Loc at the start of the show, and as if I would know who that was. So I said, I'm probably older. And there we are. I am.
You know what? I got to the point in life where there are people who don't know who Tone Loc is. And I'm like, oh
Yes.
gosh, I
Those
am in
people are
my 40s.
crazy. I'm just
They
kidding.
are crazy.
Ah.
But yeah, that toxic masculine energy, I think it's going out of vogue. I
Mhm.
think certainly in the business arena, certainly when you look at millennials, you look at like the decisions of where millennials want to work, like there's a beginning to be a changing landscape of what are the core values of companies. And so again, slow iceberg of change.
Mm.
Not, please, to all the listeners, don't go come cut my leg off. Like I get it, slow iceberg of change. But I am heartened by where I think
Yeah.
the business landscape and hopefully the social landscape and the expectations and understandings about relationships and other, at least hopefully we're headed in the right direction.
It feels like we are. It feels like, I think the fact that we have these conversations and that they're real, because it starts in business, but it trickles down into every area of your life. If you're showing up in an energy that isn't in your core, you're faking it, and that gets tiresome, and that can be relentless on your soul. If you're every day you're going to work as a woman or a man showing up in an energy that you're not comfortable in. So let's talk a bit about women in the business arena and how they show up in their masculine. I know what it looks like for me, and I'm able to very quickly check myself before I wreck myself.
Right.
It's a learned skill, and I'm still definitely practicing. I'm practicing at home for sure. But for me, it's like, if I start to get too much, like I'm ordering people around, or I'm ordering my kids around, or I'm ordering around, that's a huge one. Like, whoa, I need to check myself. So in business, like, have you seen, because women, we just think we're competing. Like, we don't understand that our power isn't pretending to be like a guy. It's being in our feminine, a strong feminine. You can still get shit done, but it's like showing up with your dick in your hands at the office is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
Um,
Probably only goes so far.
yeah. And
Right.
everyone will end up hating you, and no one will want to work for you.
Got some maybe short-term benefits at best, but
Yep.
probably not going to go well in the long run. Yeah. So here's my biggest piece is with women in business is like I really want my clients to really step in and own their value.
Mm.
And I think that's like, I think some people may call that masculine, but it's like when I see my female clients like just really, really own into who they are and the value that they create for their customers, it's like we can start unlocking so much for them where they can still roll in a feminine way, but they're like going to start being paid the way they should be paid.
Yes. Yep.
That's like a huge thing for me is like, like, you know, we need to work out what's underlying the fact that you're undercharging. Like
Right.
most women listening to this right now, like, I want you to, like, you're undercharging for your services, but like, nobody can just tell you, oh, go raise your rates. There's an energetics underneath it that when we align with that, like all of a sudden so many things can start happening. So that's, I think, a core piece. And I think men can kind of like own their value, right? It's like, I don't want you to masculinely own your value. I want you to do it from a feminine standpoint, but nonetheless, I want you owning your value.
Well, I think too, because for men, the way that you honor men is respect, right? I respect you. That's what you guys are all about. Freedom, respect, all that sort of thing. It's not like that for us. For us, it's like even just through this show, personally, I'm starting to understand the value that I'm bringing. I'm not a coach. Again, I'm not charging anything, but I will have courses for sale. Even saying that, it's tripping me up a bit. You can see it.
Right.
Because I'm like, ooh. But I'm pushing through it anyway. But it's true. Like, it's in my core. I just want to help, and I just want to shift how women think about. And the tagline is like rediscovering your feminine energy and still kicking ass in business.
That's right.
Like, because they're not one or the other. For a guy, it is a lot easier just to show up and be like, yeah, of course I deserve that money. Hell yeah, my price is this. You don't like it. I've had coaches who don't even have a website, and they still get paid just because of what's coming out of their mouths. So I love that. So if you see a woman who is fighting it, like let's say her ego is still fighting you, helping her dip into that self, how do you manage that? How do you even bring it up? Like, especially with a paying client?
Yeah, there's a really powerful reframe. So women typically have the giver nurturer frame, right? Like it's there's the motherhood narrative. And particularly in my tribe, which are really mission driven, right? So whether they're male or female, they're really mission driven. They want to serve, they want to uplift people, they want to make a positive impact in the world, they want to leave a legacy that matters. And so underlying that is this kind of real desire to give. And so I don't want anybody to lose that, right? That's who my people are, right? I don't just have takers that want to extract as much money out of economies as they possibly can. So there's a reframe that I like to offer them, which is, and to anybody listening, is you can get paid phenomenally, and it's about how much value is created for the customer. And once my clients begin to realize, like, oh, when I charge my full worth, I'm not sacrificing my identity as a giver. And I think that I see that when people really can own into that and go, wow, like that reframe allows them to still hold on to the identity of it as a giver and get paid phenomenally.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because a lot of, I mean, you and I both know there's so many spiritual people who want to impact the world, and they're broke as shit.
Broke.
And here's real talk about that. I would never hire somebody who's broke if I want to be abundant.
That's right.
Like I've had a coach, in fact, a few years ago, where they were not financially anywhere that I would want to be. And so, no disrespect to that person, but I'm not at that level. I'm at a different level. I want to impact, but I want the dollars and cents as well. So let's talk a bit. So you mentioned you have a girlfriend. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about the fun stuff.
Yay.
The stuff where we screw up all the time. You and I, men and women, we mess it up all the time.
Oh my God, I might have messed it up this morning.
Yeah, I'm sure I messed it up this afternoon. So it's all good. So let's talk a little bit about how an immature or toxic masculine man shows up in relationships. You did allude to it, and you said you weren't perfect. So tell a little bit about the not perfect version of you and when you shifted.
Well, I just want to admit, I think it's a work in progress. I think my girlfriend would admit I'm probably in like a really small percentage of the male species, and still with huge room to evolve, right? So it's like yes and type
Yep.
situation. I think for me, my journey has been being really aware of assault, sexual assault. There have been some experiences that I won't go into on this podcast of things that have happened around me that kind of opened my eyes to like, whoa, something is really, really messed up. And so it began a process of like asking really powerful questions and like, how do I need to change? How do I need to evolve? I think if I'm being really vulnerable and honest, I think there's a lot of healing out of our own childhoods that, like, particularly as men, you know, we may be still opening our eyes to those things. So, for example, like there were some incidents that occurred. I stepped in some piles of shit publicly, and I went to my girlfriend about it. And at one point, she was like, "Well, they're revealing your shadow, right?" And so then she challenged me to kind of, go dive deep into like shadow work. But then we all of a sudden realized that probably neither of us is like exactly equipped to really, do that
Yeah.
work. And then it left me like completely like emotionally crippled and like, just like, I don't know what to do with this. Right. And so, I think it's a work in progress. I think the first stage is beginning to like see, right. Beginning to like witness into it. And so even though I feel like, I've done a lot of personal growth, personal development work, you still see like when you're actually in the trenches of a relationship, like, oh my God, I'm still not showing up, as well as I'd like.
Yeah. No, and I have to first say thank you for the honesty and just that vulnerability. It's important. And I think the last, last one I had episode I had, I was talking about when you're vulnerable, it gives us the ability to exhale.
Right.
So it's not like, because I know that you guys have predominantly, most men have been raised with this idea that vulnerability is weakness, crying means you're a wimp, all that narrative. But the exact opposite is true. Like when we see a man who can get into his feminine energy, release it, cry, be vulnerable, all those things, it makes us take a deep breath and let go, because all of a sudden I know I can trust you with the same shit you're telling me. And that is like the most beautiful place to be. And then the flip side to that is being able to snap yourself back into the mature masculine when needed. And only you can do that. We can't do that for you. And so I just want to honor you that saying, just being vulnerable, it actually is a deep, deep, deep sign of mature masculine energy all over the map. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for that reflection. It's, you know, we, I think in some of like, we don't yell or fight. Like that's not our thing, but in our moments where things have gotten complicated and we've worked through each other's stuff, I think there've been some really powerful moments where she sees, oh, there's like there's just like a gentle, soft little boy inside this man, right?
Yep.
And when she's been able to come to that and see that and go, oh, right, like so I think there's this beautiful witnessing of like the little girl in her, the little boy in me, and really recognizing, going, hey, how do we hold space for that? And as a father, 6 years ago, I made a decision to go sober when my son was 2.5. And I was like, I want to make a powerful decision because I want my son to have a dad who's present and being able to model as much emotional stability as I'm able to model for him. And part of that is like, hey, it's okay to cry. Like, hey, it's like, tell me what you're feeling, right? Like,
Yeah.
Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Do you need a hug right now? Your daddy loves you. And he's like, I know, you tell me all the time, right? Like, and I'm like, you're going to hear it every day.
So
So
just deal with it.
That's right. Deal with it. It's trying to model into the next generation of men, like, hey, here's a different way of being. And So, despite our flaws, there are some of us that are trying to awaken to new
Yeah.
ways of thinking.
And because you have to. There's the time of killing each other and doing all the things you're doing is just got to stop because it's ridiculous. There's 0 point to any of it.
Yeah.
So what are some ways? So how long have give me, you don't have to give me exact anniversary, but how long have you and your girlfriend been together?
We're in our second year.
Okay.
So, yep.
And she's into the personal development stuff as well. Okay. So I think that makes a huge difference.
Big time.
So what are some ways that have you ever witnessed her, if she's any type of boss woman or any type of strong woman, she's going to challenge you in that way. And have you read The Way of the Superior Man? David Deida?
What is the book?
The Way of the Superior Man.
No, I haven't yet.
It's really good. Pick it up. You should both read it. Yeah, it's a short read.
Awesome.
It's intentionally short, I think, for the guys, but I appreciated that. It's like just a little book. But so when women tend to, David talks a lot about like we're like sort of a tornado and we're this hurricane of emotion, and you guys don't get to experience that, but we have that experience through this journey. Do you ever have where she comes back into herself with you, where you're seeing she's still wearing the mask of masculinity? Are you able to disarm her knowing what you know, or do you just kind of watch it?
I think I have called in a really strong queen, right? And so, I think we've been on a beautiful journey to explore where, where her, I think we call them her talents, right? Like, where do they come out, right? And is that strong, that fierce, like, and I'm like, hey, we can pull the talents back. I'm your loving partner here.
Nudge, nudge.
That's right. So I think for, relations were so beautiful because they reveal our zones where we have opportunities to evolve, and we have opportunities to like shed like survival mechanisms.
Yep.
That, like she's a self-made woman, like she's had to, hustle her tushy off to, be where she's at. And so I think she, would say like, in many ways, even though I've been challenging in many ways, it's also like the most amount of safety, and being able to just, ease into and just relax and not be in fight or flight. So I think that's an evolution, right? Like that's a process because there still are those little bit of fight or flight moments. And I think, I think I respond well sometimes. I think there are other times where I have room for growth. But the general umbrella is, hey, let's start breaking some of these narratives. Let's start breaking some of these molds of, how things have been and how people have interacted with each other.
That's awesome. And I think the interesting thing about female entrepreneurs that are high performers, I'll say, or high achievers, is that most of us have come from some kind of pretty substantial adversity in childhood.
That's right.
Yeah. And so what we tend to do is we show up in the masculine before we even understand what that concept is. And we wonder why we have conflict. Like all my whole 20s and 30s with various different people, it was conflict after and it might not be like open outwardly, but there was conflict always in my life because I wasn't in flow. And when you said you called on a strong queen, that's beautiful. Like you have to know how beautiful it is to hear a man say that, because often we think no one can handle us because we're tough to handle, like because we're strong, but I always say, like once I know I can drop my bags at the door and just take that exhale, it's a game changer. But having a man like that it can be challenging to find for strong women for sure. So I think it's wicked that you called her a strong queen, because that's still honoring that feminine energy in her.
Well, I'll give you a little glimpse. And I think she'd be okay with me sharing this. To speak to that point, she moved. I'm in Tucson. She moved from New York to be with me. I have a son here. And so I was less mobile, my son's mother's here, etc. And she made a career change to move really full-time into her coaching business. And there was a moment early on where things were really rocketing for me. They still are. And there was a moment where she came to me, she says, hey, why don't I get on board, and hey, let's power couple what you're doing, right? Like, your thing's rocketing, like I can plug in, in various ways into that. And partially because of my own background with, partnerships and business, I was like, I'm that's not something I want to do right now. But my bigger point was, I was like, I believe in you and like what you're capable of.
Mm.
And I really want you to move forward your message in the world, right? And I believe you deserve financial sovereignty and all these pieces. And while that was like a little sticky at that time, it's like she's rocking it right now. Like, she's having record-setting months. She
So
filled
good.
her full mastermind. She had a multiple 5-figure launch. Like, she is crushing it, and she's creating like an absolute beast. She's doing her thing. And, I smile because it's like, yeah, like that's what I see. Like, I
Right.
don't see you as second fiddle to me. I see you as equal. And from there, it's like, hey, maybe we could explore, what some
Right.
co-collaboration would look like. But it's like you building your thing and standing strong into that, because that's what I see in her, right? It was like, I don't
Right.
see you as my second. I see you as my equal, right?
Right.
So that was, it was a little sticky, a little bumpy in that time. But I think what we see happening for her right now is such a testament to the fact that she is amazing, and she has a message, and she has a voice, and, so anyway.
That's beautiful. And I think the really important piece is, ladies, hear me clearly on this, is that as soon as he said that, I would guess that she started to attach meaning to it, that, oh, you don't want me to be a part of this, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, blah 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 blah. The story goes on, and then it compounds, and you stack the story, and all of a sudden he's an asshole and you're the victim. And that just isn't the way, because a mature masculine man will have seen what he saw in her.
Yeah.
And instead of, like, there's nothing wrong with supporting your partners, of course, but if you're supporting your partner in spite of your own power, that's different, because eventually the resentment will grow. It'll be 10 years from now, like, why the F didn't I do what I wanted to do, blah 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 blah. So I think that stickiness is important, because it pushed her to, like, now look what's happening, right? I mean, it's a game changer. That's incredible. Because I think women get this feminine stuff a little twisted too. Like, they think it means you have to be subservient to the man in every way, and it's not that at all. It's letting him change the light bulb, it's letting him lead, it's letting him make you feel safe, but it's not doing what you want to do. And a strong man and a good man will understand that, which obviously you've shown us.
I would say the biggest thing that, if for the ladies, if you want a little glimpse into how to have your man feel amazing, is to believe in him.
Yeah.
Believe in him. That piece will go miles. Believe in him. That's I would say he might not admit it, but like, that's really what he craves. He wants to know that you believe in him.
Yeah, and I think a lot of guys would admit it now. So, okay, so to that, what does that look like? What does that look like?
I think it's supporting him in what he sees for himself, even when it's a little rocky for him. Like, if you're with a sensitive man who's willing to say, hey, this is kind of difficult for me right now, or hey, I'm nervous, I'm going through some of my own fears and limiting beliefs, right? It's like, hey, I believe in you. Like, you got this. Like, you're like, you've trained, you're prepared, and whatever happens, right? So it's like, it's being able to be, it's like, people see the man as the rock, but I actually think there's like kind of that feminine rock as well, of like, hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
in your corner no matter what's going on for you. I think it's giving your man the benefit of the doubt, especially if he's getting attacked publicly. Like, hey,
Mm.
I'm right here with you. I am right next to you. Like, yes, it's holding him to a high standard and, calling him out, but it's also being like, hey, despite all that, like, no matter, it's like, I am right here next to you. Because certainly the more that, like, I put myself out there, like, I get reamed. And, you know, it's like to just know that like she's like right in my corner. It's like, you know, like I don't need more as a man to know that, right? It's like I don't need 100,000 people. I need her, like need that
Right.
rock, right? And the same way that I am for her, right? It's like, hey, no matter what's going on for her, it's like, hey, you know, like I will be, you know, I will be the attack dog
Right.
that will go defend, you know. So I think those are pieces that I think are really important between the two.
Yeah. Thank you for that. What about, we hear this a lot, especially in our space, holding space for someone. I know what that looks like for me, but so for the gentleman, I think maybe let's talk to the guys on what does that look like when you hold space for your woman or your queen? What does that look like?
Oh God, it's like get better, Alok. So I think one of the big ways that, you know, I've evolved, I think she would admit that I've improved at least in this area, you know, is understanding feminine rhythms around business,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, she's like, look, like I have my cycles. I have, you know, like I move rhythmically. She moves seasonally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And whereas I'm just like a freight train that's like go, move, 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 you know, like
Yeah.
forward, 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 fill up with gas, forward, forward, right? You know,
Love it. Yeah.
you know, she's, you know, so I've really tried to just embrace, hey, she has a different way of going about it, but it's still her moving forward.
Right.
Um, and so I think that's been a space to kind of go, hey, it's okay. I think what's been really wonderful is the more momentum she's developed, she's also like, look at all these ladies that aren't doing shit to move their businesses forward.
Yeah.
So
That's real talk.
we've had some really good chuckles. She works with early stage female entrepreneurs, right? And she's like, oh my God, I now get what you were talking about. So she's, I think, found a happy medium between just pure feminine flow and masculine nonstop, right? There's kind of that middle zone. I think we both agree there's, in terms of holding space, it's, you know, there's the kind of Brene Brown zone, which is like, don't be a man who feels like you have to fix it.
Yes. Preach.
You know, but we're honestly in our household, like, I don't think either of us actually just looks for the other person to just sit and like listen and
Mm-hmm.
just stare at the other person. So we're kind of halfway in between. It's not her trying. I mean, I think we've tried to evolve beyond trying to fix the other person. I know she definitely, the more that she's let go trying to fix and change me, the more she actually gets the change that she wants out of me.
Yep.
So I think we're trying to find that space of like, how do we share what our belief system is without the expectation that the other person should change?
Yeah, that's a deep one. That's a hard one.
It's a hard one, right?
It's definitely a hard one. And I think like from a woman's perspective, holding space, it is, sometimes we do need that touch of masculine, you know, touch of the fix it hunter stuff, but a lot of times we don't. And you touched on business cycles, but there's also the woman's cycle. And this is something, okay. Perfect. Because this is the thing that's really interesting to me is like, I'm 44 now. And so I'm starting to wind down from.
You're acting like you're so much older
I
than
know. Okay. Well, I'm 2 years older.
God. Oh my God.
2 years is a long time. Okay.
Oh my God. I'm so much older than you.
I'm so much older than you.
We were in high school at the same time.
This is true. Fine. But yeah, like it's like we're winding down now. And so what I've actually started charting this, because what was happening is, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm assuming. Okay. And there's a lot of guys like that who are like, hustle, hustle, hustle. Never stop. Keep going. If you're sitting there watching Netflix for an hour, your business is fucked and you better get back to it. And da, 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 da. So as women, we're watching all these guys and we're like, yeah, why do I suck? Why can't I be? Well, here's the real deal. It's broken into 4 weeks. The first 2 weeks of the cycle, I have a ton of energy. I'm on fire creatively. I'm making decisions. I'm booking people in my podcast, blah, blah, blah. Week 3, PMS, I've got less energy. I'm still really creative, a lot less energy. My body's starting to be tired. During the period, I don't give a shit if you take my whole company and burn it.
Right.
Like, I don't care what happens. You women want help? F you, I'm in bed. I'll talk in 6 days. It's the truth.
Yeah, no.
And once I realized that, so interestingly enough, everyone's going to know my cycle now. I'm on my way out of it. I'm done. And so now the energy is starting to come back up. The productivity is starting to come back. So I've been charting it, and I'm going to do a little PDF for women to chart it for themselves, because I swear to you, if I could tell you how many times I thought I wasn't doing the right thing for my life when I was PMSing, you'd be shocked. Probably every month I question all of it.
Right.
And now I go, oh, shut up, eat a friggin' chocolate bar and zip it. Because now I'm not trying to be like, what? A man.
Right.
I'm honoring that I'm not a man. And Gary Vaynerchuk will never have to use a tampon, hopefully.
Right. Well,
right? Like, and honoring that that's our power, and also to just chill out. But when you talk about her, it's villainized, right? Like, not to go too far off the tangent, but like, even as kids, you guys, boys will say, oh, she's on her period. Oh, careful, the bitch is out. Oh my God. And like, you can't pass a tampon to your friend because it's the dirt, it's the worst, all that whole narrative that boys are taught. So we come up thinking this is a bad thing. I have 4 daughters.
Right.
And I say to my husband, he's like, oh, I need a period apartment. I'm like, zip it. It's not a bad thing.
Right.
You got to stop acting like it's this evil. You're here because of someone's period.
That's right. Like you only exist because this thing happened.
Exactly. And so I think it's really important to talk about, and men honoring that too, right? Like you say, you're watching it, because it's not like we stop. We don't stop. We just slow down for a little bit, and then we're bulldozing right beside you. So I love that you see that. That's beautiful, beautiful distinction.
Yeah. And I think, she functions in like seasonal too, right? So for her, winter and so, I think that's been a whole zone that I've adopted. I think for me, what's happened where I think she's hit that happy medium, and certainly in the month, right? Like when she goes into her cycle, it's like she's going to sleep more, right? She's going to sleep a lot more. But I think the piece is she's also found like this happy medium, because for me, like momentum, I'm not a Gary V, accolade in terms of go, right? Like, even for my own self, like I don't have to, like my business is scaling at this point. And actually for the very first time, this will make you laugh, but I thought my business was broken 2 weeks ago. And Caitlin and I talked about it. And I literally was telling her, and she's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're having record setting quarters, like why is this happening? I said, well, but I look at my calendar and it's not loaded.
Right.
It's not loaded with one-on-one clients all the time, and sales calls all the time. Like something must be wrong. Something must be falling apart. And so actually for the very first time in 20 years, I'm able to begin to actually relax and not feel that I have to be full tilting it all the time.
Yeah.
But
congratulations on that. That's beautiful.
God, it smacked me up the face. I didn't even know.
You thought shit was burning, but it's not.
I thought it was burning down.
Right.
I'm not kidding you. This is not some dramatic. I literally thought it must be burning down because my calendar was open.
Yeah.
It took me, like I had to actually have a conversation and go, oh my God, you finally achieved what's called leveraging time. Like, oh my God, this happened for me. Not just for other people, It was a mind-blowing experience, FYI. But in it, I do think there's a happy medium, because momentum it takes a long time to build, but it's so easy to kill it.
Yep.
And I think that's what she saw. It was like, she was like, what does the feminine flow look like where I don't lose all of my momentum?
Right. Yeah.
Because it's so hard to like get the rock moving again. Yep. Right. So I think that's my biggest recommendation is as you're moving in feminine, not you, but as one is moving in feminine flow, it's like, hey, just don't lose all of your momentum.
Right.
Because it really is a setback. So what can you do to nurture, just that momentum just at least keeps moving.
Yeah. And I think that that's an incredible point too, because a lot of women, like I said, if they don't know what's happening, they think it's time to give up and they shut everything down. But like in those moments when you're feeling like you're more tired and you all that, that's a perfect, those 4 or 5 days, that's time for reflection. And you don't stop. You just shift, pivot for a couple of days and then get right back in it, because it's kind of like on a racetrack, right? Like your PMS could be when they're changing tires,
That's right.
and just get back on the track once the tires are changed, but to honor that and not to freak out every time it happens, because that's what we do. Like, oh my God. Okay, so lastly, maybe you can share a couple of ways for a young man or a man who's not as enlightened and aware as you are, how to maybe show his woman that he understands her feminine energy. There's always lots of really nice tricks, but maybe give us 2 examples of how you would really let her know you see her in this way.
Awesome. Can I share one thing in business
100%.
from the feminine that I think is really critical, and then I'll answer that. So one of the things that I think, like, I love sales, right? And I specialize in people growing sales. I think there's so much room for people to embrace the feminine in their sales process.
1,000,000%.
And it's like the more we can embrace like compassion and love and like human connection and empathy and, traits that are typically more associated on the feminine side, like I think a lot of men would really benefit from understanding, and women out there for understanding how to be able to utilize your feminine energies like in the moments where it will actually help you bring a deal across the finish line. So, I know there's so much male Grant Cardone,
Mm-hmm.
intense male sales, and there's so much resistance to selling because there's an assumption that I'm gonna have to turn into like some hyper aggressive, manipulative, salesy slime ball. And I really want to say to all of your listeners out there, like, there are ways to be able to sell and build relationships and, do marketing, client acquisition that really can be built, I think, on a really firm feminine energy that I try to bring into every one of my sales conversations. So that's just something where I think a lot of men could benefit from that. And for you women out there, like, just know that there are ways to sell that will be in alignment with your soul, where you don't have to turn into some hyper masculine or even toxic masculine man to be able to sell.
Yeah, and I'll speak to that because I have another company. I actually had a sales call this morning, and my sales calls and people, even my coach, I was at her house once. We were doing a session, and I said, "Oh, sorry, I have to take this. It's a call for the content company." And I got off the phone and she was like, "How the hell do you do that?" I'm like, "Do what?" She's like, "I cannot believe the way that you sell." I go, "It's because I'm not selling.
Right.
I'm literally having a conversation, and it's not fake. It's not made up. I get into my heart every single call. And I've been doing it 6 years. I've talked to thousands of people over that time. We've written 40,000 pieces of content. Every person I talk to, I'm not thinking, get them to the sale. I'm thinking, how can I give value here sincerely? And that's not, and I will tell you, I was raised by a father, both parents there, but my father was a used car salesman. So what the hell do you think I saw my whole child? Oh, we used to roll back the odometer, and what do I got to do to get you in this car? Like, even so far back as Sesame Street. Okay. If you ever watch Sesame Street, remember the guy, he'd open his coat to sell you a letter. How do I get you? Right. So you're 2 and 3 years old and you're having these images of a dirty, slimy in the back alley with his glasses and a hat on sales guy. And we wonder why we resist sales. That is why, my friends. Like, that isn't, people say to me, "Oh, you're in sales." And I say, no, I say it, but I build relationships. And if you don't need me, I'm not going to force myself down your throat.
That's exactly, and that's like, I say to everybody, like, hey, you're curious about how you could add, multiple 6 figures on to your coaching consulting business, right? Hey, let's get on a call. And this is literally what you'll hear me say. I'm going to listen in to hear if I can add a ton of value to you or not. And if I can't, I'm going to make a referral to somebody who's much, much better, who's like absolute assassin at the thing that you actually need more than me. If I can, I'm going to take a real strong stand for you, and we're probably doing something. Like, we're probably going to work together.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like that giver mentality. I think that's what's really important. You can bring in that giver mentality of like, hey, part of giving is making sure, do I solve the
Right.
issues that you have? Because if I don't, like, somebody else is much better for you than me. And I love that, right? And sales can just be so easy when it's like so soul aligned and done from a position of wanting to serve the person. And sometimes that
Yep.
means it's not you,
Right. Yep.
right?
And you got to be comfortable in saying that. I'll tell you a quick story now. When I think I was about 19, 20, and I just got a job at a gym here in Winnipeg. It was called Ladies Choice Fitness Center. And it was a man who was from the US and he was running it. And I was in sales. And I didn't know shit about shit, but my job was to take the person through the machines so that they felt they had a pretty hard workout. And at the end of it, they sign and they buy membership. I
Right.
had the 16-year-old girl come through and I worked her out hard because
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, right?
Yeah.
I'm 19. I'm not a personal trainer.
Yeah.
She ended up fainting.
Ooh.
And I flipped out, right? Inside, I'm like, holy shit. I was athletic. I did dancing. I know how hard you got to get pushed at 16 to faint. I'm like, geez, Louise. So I go to help her and he slaps me on the shoulder. He's like, leave her. And I'm like, what do you mean leave her? This girl just she's on the floor. He's like, just let her be. She's going to think she's really out of shape and she'll get a membership. Literally, that was the moment in my sales career where I was like, no, like I felt slimy. And it was then where I was like, okay. And ever since I've evolved, but that's the conditioning. That's the
Totally.
conditioning and it doesn't work. And I never sold her a membership. I actually tried to quit because he told me to fuck off once. And I
Right.
walked out and he ran down the block to catch me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's like, that's not, you might get
Sales
the deal but the person's going to hate it. They're not going to, blah, blah, blah. We know the outcome of that type of sale.
sales is about getting the right person across the finish line at the right time, with the right product at the right price. Like,
Yep.
it's not about selling anybody and everybody. It's about
Right.
actually caring for the best interests of this. Like right now, I have a cohort that I just filled. I've added a couple slots. I'm going to divide the group, and there's a couple people that are considering, hey, should I join? My next one's in September, right? And they're like, well, do you think I should do September or June? And I just have honest conversations with them, right? I'm like, here's why, what's going to serve you best.
Right.
And once we come from that, and for many people, like once you get out of the first phase of business where you're no longer like desperate about how you're going to pay your bills, like you can start having really like loving conversations. You're not going to be just closing the deal because it's how you're going to pay rent. It's like,
Right.
I make a lot of money at this point. Like, I want to have the conversation that goes, what do you need? Like,
Yeah.
what's going to serve you best? Is kicking the
Right.
can down the road until September going to be the right fit for you? I don't think it is, because I think making powerful decisions move your life forward. But then I allow them to choose, and they're like, well, there's this, and this between now and then. I've got to finish it. I'm like, okay, great. Well, why don't you put a deposit down for September? Like, we'll roll then.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So tell us about how
Great.
the original, we went way off on a tangent,
I
but
know.
this is the show. So
This is the show.
I embrace it.
So for the men out there, here are the things that I'm working on. For my partner, flowers never get old.
Nope.
They aren't the thing in the movies, and they do every time my partner, she doesn't take for granted. They still have the effect. So I know it sounds simple, but you might do that. 2, more physical touch, right? So 3, celebrating her for what's amazing about her. And I think that's I think that's probably part where me and every man, we all have the opportunity to do better. We get so caught up in what we're doing and maybe the little moments of conflict or strife or whatever. And, it will go miles to celebrate her privately and also publicly. Like, you can go through my feed and you're going to see me celebrate what's going on for her, to know, what she's valued for. And then to just continue to do your own work to heal the wounded little boy inside of you. I think that's, oh gosh, like there's a book, I think it's called Healing the Child Within.
Mm-hmm.
And I think many men, I know for me, there's one particular exercise in there that's absolutely devastating, in a good way. They're like, really see, oh my God, that wounded little boy, like probably for most of the men out there, most men probably not even having a conversation about what the wounded little boy inside of you actually is. but
Right.
it's probably the root of a lot of the problems that are actually coming up in your relationship. So I suggest to all the men out there, outside of those kind of tangible things you could do, is to really start going, hey, what is the wounded little boy in me? Like, how do I begin to ask questions? Like, who do I ask for help around? Where is that showing up? I think it absolutely will catapult you into being the man that you probably want to be.
And I think it's important to note that like most guys aren't going to just intrinsically know that there's a wounded child
That's
in there.
right.
So the way that I think that shows up is if your relationships aren't harmonious, if your business isn't going well, if you're not able to lose weight, or if you're not getting your body healthy, like those are some indicators of what your subconscious is really thinking.
Yeah.
So consciously you might be like, oh, I'm on top of my shit and da da da, but your subconscious is rearing its head, and the subconscious is ladled in the childhood, and that's where the work needs to happen. So I think if any of those things are happening, if there's areas in your life that you're not mastering, that would be the red flag or the opportunity to start digging deeper into the inner child or the little boy that's in there. Because you're right, we all have a smaller version of ourselves to heal and release. So, well, my friend, that was amazing, and that's done. The question period of this show is now complete. Your prize is helping millions of people. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. You can find me on social. So Alok Appadurai on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Website's just my first name .life. So ALOK.LIF as in Frank, E as in Edward. Yeah, just reach out to me anywhere. If you're mission driven, you want to be in the top 2% of your niche. Primarily, I'm in the service sector, coaches and consultants, and you want to build an impact empire that touches tons of lives around the world and make a huge difference and earn phenomenal living.
Thank you very, very much. All right. Well, let's keep in touch, and have an amazing weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much. It's been a real
You're so
privilege
welcome.
to be on the show.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.